America has been struggling with finding clean, affordable, sustainable, reliable energy sources that we can capitalize on. Currently, America relies heavily on fossil fuels, which are not only environmentally damaging, but they are also finite. This means that these resources will eventually dwindle, and we will be left with nothing. It is our mission to create a power policy that will be effective, inexpensive, and save America from its dependence on non-renewable sources of energy. Our plan is to reduce reliance on fossil fuels, not completely, but enough to make a difference. Currently, the US gets 81% of its total energy from oil, coal, and natural gas. We are proposing a plan that cuts this percentage down to 45%. Instead, we would like to increase our use of nuclear, biomass, hydroelectric, solar, wind, and geothermal energy.
To begin with, biomass energy makes up a mere 4% of the total energy that we use here in America. However, the United States has the potential to greatly expand biomass use for fuel. Biomass is an organic matter that can be used as an energy source. Plants store the energy from photosynthesis and leaves, and when these plants are burned, the stored energy is released, thus biomass energy. America has the potential of making roughly 680 million dry tons of biomass, which equates to more than 54 million gallons of ethanol. 54 million gallons of ethanol is equivalent to approximately 732 kilowatt hours of electricity. The downside to biomass is that it does pollute the air when burned, but not nearly as much as fossil fuels. And we need a whole lot more land in order to create enough biomass to replace coal. Biomass is cost-effective and typically costs about 1/3 the price of fossil fuels, doing the same job. Another benefit of increasing our usage of biomass in the United States is that it is an important part of waste management infrastructure. Although it may be inexpensive to the public, the extraction of biomass can be fairly pricey. Since we're not looking to completely rid America of coal, we do not need to worry about biomass completely replacing our fossil fuels. In addition to biomass, nuclear energy is another clean power source that should be used more in America. Nuclear energy comes from the energy released when large atoms split in a series of nuclear reactions. The splitting of atoms is known as nuclear fission. Water is used to cool down nuclear reactors, making it necessary for a nuclear power plant to be by a huge body of water. Nuclear energy makes up roughly 19% of the energy used in the United States. Nuclear power plants are expensive to build, but are relatively cheap to run. The cost of building a nuclear power plant can be anywhere from $2 billion to $7 billion. Hydropower is another source of energy that we are intending on incorporating into our power policy. Hydropower plants capture the energy of falling water in order to produce and generate electricity. A turbine that converts this kinetic energy into mechanical, which then gets converted into mechanical energy by another turbine. The efficiency of such plants depends on how old and how well maintained the plant is. An old, poorly maintained plant converts 60% of the energy captured into usable electricity, versus a newer and better maintained plant that captures and converts about 90% of the energy. The downside to using hydropower on a large scale is the destruction and alteration of habitats. Costs vary depending on the size of hydroelectric power plants. New power plants can produce energy at a cost of 12 cents per kilowatt hour, and large plants can produce energy as low as 3 cents to 5 cents per kilowatt hour. These costs are roughly 20% times higher than that of a typical coal plant. This is a big price difference, but the upside to hydropower versus coal is that there will be no greenhouse gases or air pollutants produced. Thus, we won't be spending millions of dollars to fix those problems.
Our plan places most of the emphasis on nuclear, biomass, and hydroelectric energy. We are planning on keeping the existing structures and plans for other renewable energy sources like solar, wind, and geothermal. The reason these aren't part of our main plan is because they don't produce as much energy as the first three that we introduced. Solar energy is generally useful in places that get a lot of sun. For example, California is a place that solar systems can thrive because of the almost year-round sun. Solar panels are made up of PV, photovoltaic cells that convert sunlight into DC, electricity. The electricity generated from this conversion can be used throughout the day. The DC power is then converted into usable AC electricity with an inverter. The reason we are not relying heavily on solar is because it's not a constant source of power, especially in areas that don't get a lot of sun. It is hard to know whether or not your solar panel will generate power every day. In 2015, the average cost nationwide of a solar system installation was about $4,000 per kilowatt hour. Currently, solar costs about 12.5 cents to 24 cents for the average consumer. Wind energy is made by using massive wind turbines. Wind turbines convert kinetic energy in the wind into usable mechanical energy. Wind energy is a great source of renewable energy. However, initial startup costs are quite high, reaching in the millions of dollars to create a single plant. The average cost for a consumer using wind power is about 7 to 20 cents. Geothermal energy is produced by obtaining heat from Earth's core. It's used to heat homes and businesses. Currently, 0.4% of electricity comes from geothermal energy, which isn't a whole lot. The reason it isn't used as much as the other renewable sources is because of its large startup costs. The average consumer pays roughly 5 cents per kilowatt hour for geothermal energy. The current percentages for energy sources are as follows: coal 33%, natural gas 33%, nuclear 20%, hydropower 6%, biomass 1.6%, geothermal 0.4%, solar 0.6%, wind 4.7%, petroleum 1%, other gases less than 1%. Our plan for the hopefully near future would be to cut these percentages to the following: coal 20%, natural gas 20%, nuclear 30%, hydropower 10%, biomass 5%, geothermal 2%, solar 1%, wind 5%, petroleum 1%, and other gases less than 1%. So overall, our plan includes relying more on renewable energy sources than we currently do, but also not entirely cutting off the non-renewable energy sources that we are so dependent on. The only big cost comes from the initial building of these power plants, but the good news is we already have most of these power plants in existence. Thank you for listening.